I was waiting for the life insurance to kick in to have an accident. That was my plan. What's up, motivators? Welcome back. It's Kevin. This is Purebullfit, where we sift through the bovine fecal matter rife in the fitness industry and try to provide you with actionable information so you can live a better, longer life. I am a health coach, a personal trainer, and co-author of the book Sleep, Sex, Strength: Small Changes for Extraordinary Results. If you're interested in any of our online coaching, a simple consultation, a program, or something to that effect, you can check us out at purebullfit.com. If you're not in a position to do any of that right now, I will point you towards the free 40-page starter guide that has programs in it and advice on how to get started if you're just getting into activity or healthy living for the first time or returning to it after a long time. That's my free gift to you. I'm going to give it to you straight, guys. Today's video is going to get heavy. And I'm not talking about weight. I'm talking about feelings. I'm going to be talking about mental health, suicidal ideations, depression, a lot of the things that people go through, and I'm going to leverage my own experiences that I will share with you in painful detail. I know that not everybody is ready to have a discussion like this, so you have been warned. If this isn't for you, then maybe watch this video another time when you're in a better headspace. And if you're one of those people who is emotionally constipated and thinks that any admission of struggling or talking about depression or acknowledging that feelings exist is somehow a sign of weakness, once again, I'm confused how you got here, because those are not things or principles that this community supports. We recognize that physicality and emotionality, our mental and physical selves, overlap significantly, and that there are many lessons in iron that we can use to build mental resilience so that we can live a full, high-quality life, because that's what we're actually about. So if you're a knuckle-dragging, slack-jawed wall toucher, maybe come back to this when you're a little more evolved, okay? So with that content warning out of the way, let's get into it. What brought this to mind for me was the Callum von Moger situation, where he allegedly or apparently has made an attempt on his own life. He's currently in the hospital recovering. I don't have any current information on that. I'm not going to be deep diving into his specific situation because that's not mine to talk about. And I want to be really clear that I'm not trying to build views or spews for views to capitalize on somebody else's misfortune. I have personal experience with the feelings of absolute and utter hopelessness, with feeling like there is absolutely no way out, and surviving the ordeal. And I want to share those experiences and those perspectives in the desperate hope that it will actually help somebody else out there who may be going through the same thing. One of the things that really stuck out about this conversation is people asking, how could this happen to someone like him? Callum's a guy that has success. He has a massive following, people constantly telling him all the things that he wants to hear. He's Mr. Universe 2015. He's got the body. Presumably he's got the money. How could this happen to somebody experiencing success? How could this happen to someone who has everything that I want? They look to him as the pinnacle of what they're trying to achieve, and having achieved all of that success, how could they be depressed? How could they be isolated? How could they be mentally unwell? Was it the drugs? Who knows? But the important thing to understand here is this could happen to anyone. It doesn't matter how successful you are, how together the world thinks you have it. All of us are susceptible to these feelings of isolation and hopelessness that can lead us to the place where we feel like the only way for it to end is if we no longer exist. Unfortunately, I know what that feels like. I know what that headspace looks like. I know what that utter hopelessness feels like. And from the outside, nobody knew. Not a damn person knew. I started out as a really high-performing Marine that was consistently put up for meritorious promotion and awards. I received a reward on the back wall there from Special Operations Task Force 82 by working with Marine Corps Special Operations Command 2nd Battalion. We did some really impactful stuff overseas. And before that, I worked in the mission supporting anti-narcotics and anti-human trafficking out of the Southern Arc, out of Central and South America. The work that we did was incredibly important, but it unfortunately exposed me to the absolute worst of humanity, relentlessly. And I believed at the time that I was strong enough to simply brush that off, to see and hear and experience the things that I experienced and witnessed, and not let it touch me. And I was 100% wrong. Now, on top of that, as all of that is culminating and eating away at me and doing damage when I don't even know that it's going on, I got really hurt in a stupid training accident that caused permanent nerve damage in my arms and ended my career in the Marines. So I had my identity and the thing that gave me worth suddenly taken away after about 5 years straight of being exposed to the worst that humanity has to offer. And then I was left without any recourse and any support system. You see, it takes about a year for the VA to figure out what the hell they're doing and make a proper determination, and I was considered a high priority case. In that time, my condition deteriorated significantly. And it wasn't just the abrupt life change and transition that exacerbated where I was at so badly, and what I'll talk about here in a minute, show you exactly how bad it got. No, it was the stigma of mental illness even in the military. As I said, I went from a high-performing Marine to the second worst rating that my company commander had ever given. Was that purely based off of performance? No, I had made some mistakes. I had difficulty concentrating. Nothing serious, certainly nothing worth the second worst rating. But once it was clear that I was exhibiting signs of mental distress, all of the support, all of the attaboys, all of the accolades suddenly stopped. And even previously supportive individuals like my master guns, who we all loved, who was going through his own health problems, got to the point where he was so deeply entrenched in this stigma against mental health that he openly mocked me for spontaneously bursting into tears. Something that was happening that I didn't know why, and I couldn't control it. He mocked me for that. Master Guns, you failed me, man. I asked for help and all I got was ridicule. I went from being the guy that everybody could lean on, the one that was handling the problems, taking care of folks, to feeling like I was utterly alone, and that is when I started to ask whether or not the world was better off without me. So after having a significant portion of what I viewed as my identity at that time stripped away, the only thing that I felt like I knew how to do or that I was good at, I was adrift. I had no idea what I was going to do with my life, and it took 6 to 8 months to find a steady job. I ended up working at Blizzard Entertainment as a supervisor, as a personnel manager. And I fell into that job because I had family that was concerned for me. Somebody worked at the company. They gave me a good recommendation, and I managed to get through the interview process. But I was an absolute mess. Every single day, I was finding a reason not to unalive myself. Every single day. And no one knew. Now, that might seem like a dream job, working in video games to a lot of people out there, and in some ways it was. In some ways, I loved my time there. But as the recent lawsuit from California has pointed out, it was also a really toxic place that in many ways wasn't any better than the Marine Corps, especially when it came to dealing legitimately with things like vulnerable employees in a bad mental state. So I didn't speak openly, and all of my experience to that point taught me to not speak openly about how badly I was struggling. But I'm going to tell you now, I was waiting for the life insurance to kick in to have an accident. That was my plan. And when the time came, I was too scared and too cowardly to do it, and I chose other ways to destroy my life that caused a lot of pain and a lot of difficulties that I have spent the last 10 years trying to make right. I may not have been alone in those decisions, and it may not entirely be my fault, but I can only be responsible for the things that I did, and I have been fully accountable for them. I hurt folks. Bad. And that didn't help how I was feeling. What it did do was feed into this notion that I am poison and the world really is better off without me, and that I'm just hurting the people around me and I will ultimately destroy them by my mere presence alone. That voice in your head is so convincing, and it thrives on isolation. It needs isolation. So thank God for the timely intervention of people like my friend Jess, who strove to show me that there's still light and laughter and creativity and beauty in the world through all of her artistic endeavors, when she would drag me every single day to go get truffle fries or boba, because she saw through that thin veneer of control and she saw that something was wrong, and she wanted to make sure that I was okay. Were it not for that investment and that time and that energy, I don't know if I would have cared enough about myself to try and start taking the steps to get the help I needed. And it did get me headed in the right direction. I did start to get help. That was the first time I started getting counseling, and I really realized that this thing, this PTSD, this depression that came with it, the hypervigilance, the trauma, it was not only all real, but it wasn't going to go away by itself. I needed a strong support system, and I started to build one then. But just because you've made a decision to get help doesn't mean that it's all better. It's not. Just like performance in the gym, it undulates. Just because you've built muscle once doesn't mean it's going to stay there forever. You've got to maintain it. You have to have a constant eye, a vigilant eye for the things that are going on, the things that are negatively going to affect you. You have to manage them in your life. It's exhausting. And that voice never really goes away. For the last year and a half, I have continued to have daily intrusive thoughts because of unrelated circumstances that exacerbate that feeling, that give it fertilizer, that help it grow. I don't have a drug problem. I'm not on meth. Thank God that I've had family members that struggled with addiction, if only so that I never would touch it. Because I promise you, if I had that problem on top of everything else, I would not be here. But I think it's a mistake for people to take a look at guys like Callum and say, oh, he wouldn't do that because his life is so good. It's because of the drugs. It may be because he was struggling. There was no one there to help him. He didn't know how to ask for help. Society has told him that asking for help is weakness, that made him turn to things like drugs instead. We don't know. And to assume either way would be colossally irresponsible and stupid. Look, it's really important to understand that this could happen to anybody, that nobody is immune from these kinds of feelings. And it's not necessarily going to be obvious. There was a thing that Greg Doucette said in his video towards the end that I thought was really important.
And so this is just a sad occurrence that happens in life, and you cannot put the blame on yourself.
At this point, we just have to say our prayers for him. Obviously, people from afar can't really do much.
Should the worst happen, people look for somebody to blame or they blame themselves. And both of those feelings are misguided. Ultimately, if any one of us makes that choice, it was our choice. Now, I've got some numbers listed down below that can help you. They're hotlines that can help you through acute situations. But what I'm talking about is building an absolute fortress around you of good people that you can rely on, that know what you're going through, that you can trust with that, and that you can also trust yourself to be accountable for how your reactions and how your emotions affect them, because we are still accountable for that. It's not an excuse for bad behavior, but it is absolutely essential that you bring people in around you to support you, to shine light on that dark voice that wants nothing other than solitude and isolation so that it can grow. And desperately avoid people who would have you believe or reinforce the idea that feelings are a thing that you need to deal with yourself, that you should be above it, that processing it, that respecting it, that acknowledging it is actually weakness, because those people are poison. Mental health is not a punchline to me, and to the people that it is, they are usually either emotionally constipated and just incapable of actually processing those emotions themselves, desperately in need of personal development, or they are truly awful, terrible people. And if that comment makes you feel targeted, singled out, called out, or like I might be talking about you, I am. And from the bottom of my heart, fuck you. This is serious stuff. Going through this will change your perception about everything to a degree that you cannot possibly understand unless you've been through it yourself. In 2015, I did some superhero shit. I pulled a 15-year-old girl off of the top of a parking garage before she could kill herself. As she was leaning away to end her own life, I grabbed her and pulled her to safety. We talked her down. We made sure that she was okay. We made sure she had our number and that she knew she could call us for anything. We made sure that she had someplace safe to go. And the things that she was dealing with at the time were small potatoes in the grand scheme of things, but they weren't small to her. They were so overwhelming that the thought of not being on this earth anymore was preferable to enduring it for another day. Did I feel great about that? No, I felt awful. And I couldn't figure out why. I asked my friends about it. Why am I feeling this way? And all of the answers that I got back all fell short. None of them explained what I was going through. They're talking about adrenaline and grief of what could have been. It was none of that. It came out in counseling years down the line when my psychologist asked me, do you feel like you deserved to save her? That was it. I didn't. I didn't feel like I should have been the one. It's tough, and I don't know that it ever gets better. It's stuff that we will battle the rest of our lives. I don't know if we get better at dealing with it or it gets easier over time, but what I can promise you is that if you surround yourself with the right kind of support, if you proactively get the help that you need, if you talk to people about what you need and you're honest with yourself and everyone else about what's going on with you, you haven't had your last smile. You haven't had your last good day. There is more out there for you, and the world is not better off without you. I promise. This is the first time that I've talked anywhere near this openly about the things that I've been through, and I realize that I'm opening myself up to some people with bad intentions, and that's okay, because I know all the people that have my back, and we have a wonderful community of people that will drown out those voices no matter what they try to do. But there are some folks out there that don't have that. So I'd ask you to be kind to people who are going through it. I would ask you to be vigilant, to look for the signs in other folks that they may be struggling, and just to ask them how they're doing. And I'm not saying, hey, how you doing? No, I'm saying, how are you doing? If you just ask it the right way, maybe they'll open up. Or you could take them for truffle fries. Worked for me. Mental health is something that I've been wanting to talk about more in the community for a long time, and I intend to, utilizing this platform and Twitch, which we're starting up soon. We're going to have some real honest conversations, because that overlap between physicality and emotionality is real, and there are things that we can learn to better our lives in both aspects from each. One of the things that's different from the other content that we put out is I've been fairly tolerant of people saying ignorant things in the comment section and ignorant things to each other, as long as they didn't cross a certain line. Well, I'm letting you know what one of those lines is. You will not leverage or abuse people with their emotional struggles. You will not belittle or demean or dismiss them for the things that they're going through. If you do, I will erase you from this community. I don't block many people, but you will be one of them. So be nice or be gone. Savvy? All right, guys, that's my thoughts on this situation. I hope that there was something useful, insightful, or illuminating in that ramble about my own experiences. I hope that you see that if you just look for it, there is support out there for you. And I hope that if you are not experiencing these things yourselves, or have the emotional capacity in addition to what you're struggling with in order to be the support system of someone else, that you look for those opportunities. So I realize this video is not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but you are going to be seeing more of it in the future. It doesn't matter who's not interested in it. It only matters who's going to benefit from it. And if that's 1 or 2 or 10 people, I will consider myself lucky. I'm really grateful for you guys. I love this community that we have built together. Thank you so much for being along for the ride. Only bigger and better things from here. I will see you guys in the next video, but until I do, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And maybe go find some time to go fit yourself.